Kia ora, thank you. Ko Kimberley O'Sullivan taku ingoa.
It's me, Zhiting Chen again.
And apologies, I couldn't be here for the rest of this really interesting session, so I'll be looking forward to catching up with the slides later. But we're going to talk to you about the work that we've been doing with Raukawa Energy Innovation Project, which is a collaborative partnership between Raukawa, the Lever Room, and us at Kāinga Oranga. So I'm going to use some of Aamer's slides as well, so let Raukawa speak for themselves for some of it. But this is a project that has come out of the work that Raukawa and the Lever Room did together, developing their kind of strategic framework and deciding what their priorities were for the iwi going forward. And so it comes under that, how they want to achieve a thriving Raukawa iwi. So through data-informed decisions, this project seeks to advance an iwi-led, whānau-centred and mana-enhancing energy intervention that addresses energy hardship and health inequalities amongst the Raukawa whānau and uri. They've got a real focus on what's going to happen out for their future generations and wanting to build something sustainable for the iwi. And they see this project as helping to address kind of the knowledge gap for how they get from where they are currently with a kind of energy emergency situation for a lot of their whānau to where they want to be, which is having sustainable energy that is democratised and decolonised and all of the things that Julie was talking about this morning. So it's a nice link through to that as well. The principles for this project were that whānau need to be at the centre of this, so any intervention that was designed needed to be really supportive and honest. That was one of the guiding kind of values, tika, pono and aroha, so we were working across those values but with these principles as well. And there was another really strong thread which was about data sovereignty, so the work that we were doing was to help Raukawa to collect the data and retain sovereignty over that, which meant slightly complicated ways for us working as researchers in order to set up everything so that it's completely anonymised to us. They know who they're dealing with and who each household is. But when it comes to us, it's because they share it and say, can you run the analysis on this bit? Or we say, we think there might be some interesting stuff if we do this part, but it's completely in their hands when and how we go about doing that, or if they want to share beyond us and do other things outside the project. So that kind of underpinned our way of working together. So a little bit about this project. So at the moment, phase 1 has happened. We're currently in a phase 1.5, which we'll get to. And then they're working towards phase 2, which would be rolling out energy subsidies and trialling different kinds of energy subsidies. And then their long-term view of getting to that, how do we get a sustainable energy solution for our whānau? So phase 1 was supported by some funding from Araaki that went to the Trust and the Lever Room, and that enabled detailed project design to develop the subsidy models that we wanted to test, recruitment of whānau for participation into the baseline cohort, and then for pre-testing, so some surveys, putting in some monitoring equipment, and also collecting information from electricity use. So how did we kind of do it, and what did this look like? There were a lot of wānanga required for us to figure out kind of how we would work together, and also we spent a lot of time, so this is the awesome Kaiawhena team, so we spent a lot of time in wānanga with them, and this is me and Zhiting's colleague Rachel, together with them, working on giving them the information for what sat behind the survey questions and why we were asking these particular survey questions. And then the kaiawhina were going to visit each of these whare, install the temperature, humidity and CO2 sensors in the living area and the bedrooms, and then run the short household questionnaire and adult and child questionnaires for each consenting member in the household. And that covered housing quality and energy poverty indicators and self-reported health. And we kept the questionnaire very, very focused on energy poverty. So we didn't go broader into other areas that might also have been of interest, but it was really important that we didn't kind of overburden the household. So it was a very focused survey. And for C and others who are interested, you can find those surveys in the back of the report, which is on Araaki's website, the baseline report for this. If you can't find the link, feel free to get in touch with me and I can share that. And like Leon, we used survey questions that we'd used before and other survey questions that are from the census, the GSS and other regularly used questions from national statistics, with the same idea that the whānau were all asked, would it be okay if we put the cohort information into the IDI so that we can track before and after once they've been able to implement any interventions? So we can present statistical analysis of the baseline survey data, which was undertaken with 258 whare in October, with approximately over 2 million measurements by that point. A lot of data for Zhiting to deal with very ably, thank goodness. And this was, so part of the setup involved us setting up the temperature monitors in advance, and then we kind of put them into a package. We had them set up so that each household was allocated a study ID name, and then each time they filled in a survey, it's for aroha, adult 1, aroha, child 2, or whatever it is. So yeah, that was part of our anonymisation process. So some of the stark findings here, I think the most critical one is when you ask iwi and you ask kaiawhina to identify people in their community who are in energy poverty, they do it with 98.8% accuracy. And so when I have people asking me, what questions could I use to identify households who are in energy poverty for me to roll out some kind of policy? I'm going, please talk to the iwi, because they know how to do this. So that was our kind of benchmark, was are the households below 18 degrees? And it was a relational approach to recruitment. So the kaiawhina went to who they thought was going to benefit and who they thought needed support, and they were right. So some of these very stark results here, 3 out of 5 children shivering indoors at least sometimes in winter, and half of them needing to see the GP for some kind of respiratory condition. This is a real-time monitoring snapshot from about 9 a.m. on a July morning in the whare of a kaumātua who was living alone. Not eligible for the Healthy Homes Initiative or other support. I think probably also not eligible for the winter energy payment. This person I think is too young for that. So some severe need here. And I'd also really like to point out that people respond really differently to the problem of energy poverty. So some of them are not heating at all because they want to be able to pay their bills. Other people go into debt, and we had electricity disconnections here reported by 4.6% of households, and that is about more than double what Consumer New Zealand survey of about 2% last year and this year have found as well. So some pretty severe energy deprivation in this community. Looking at the proportion of measurements below 18 degrees across the homes during the entire measurement period on the left and up the top. And then during sleeping hours, you can see that there are a significant group that are below 18 degrees, almost all of them, like we mentioned before, yeah. And then the proportion of measurements below 12 degrees across the homes during the sleeping hours on the right-hand side. So we've got that biggest number here, where not for so long, for only up to 10% of the time under 12 degrees, but it's a significant number that are going below 12 degrees. You want to say anything else about the graphs? Cool. Okay, great. I might let Zhiting. No? Okay, Zhiting has created this very beautiful graph here. So this shows overall average temperatures in the black line. And the dotted line is 18 degrees so that you can see where that is. And this is a selection of households, but I do want to read you why the brown household isn't quite as good as it initially looks. So the brown household stays above 18 degrees, yay. However, that represents the average day for one of the very few homes with mostly consistent healthy temperatures. This kaumātua living alone in her home reported spending over 50% more than she could afford to keep her home warm. In contrast, the other lines show more typical homes that maybe only reach the 18-degree threshold for a tiny patch of the day. You can see very clearly that kind of evening spot heating happening in the more purple line, whare D, where, it's kind of the afternoon and they're obviously heating in the living room probably, and then they turn it off again. But so one of the coldest homes, the blue line is E. So they failed to reach the minimum of 18 degrees for the entire winter. That's a household with 3 adults. The whānau are supporting themselves on a household income of less than $20,000. They received a late payment notice from their electricity retailer recently and had made a payment arrangement. The house doesn't meet the healthy home standard. It has substantial mould problems. In winter, their home is always cold. They can often see their breath inside. And one vulnerable household member reports always struggling to sleep in winter due to the cold. So I think this is where, thank you, the strength of putting together these kinds of data from surveys and the temperature monitoring comes into play. So phase 1.5, as I mentioned, so Raukawa were hoping to roll out a subsidy trial this winter. Unfortunately, they were not able to secure enough funding to go ahead and do that. So, yeah, we need the pūtea, or more accurately, Raukawa really needs the pūtea. So if you want to, anyone online or anyone in the room, talk to them about how to do this for next year. Āmer would love to hear from you. And if you cannot find Āmer's email, then please come to me and I will put you straight in touch with Āmer Daji at Raukawa Charitable Trust. What he has managed to do is to go back and deliver a copy of the phase 1 report with a few kind of useful pieces of information for those whānau. So phase 2, where they want to get to, is implementing the interventions and the subsidies so that we can see which subsidy is going to be the most useful, and then engage in the post-testing data collection, and then that will inform implementation of their big picture plan where they want to get to in future. So thank you very much.